So let's start with the question of what actually drives the cost of the drugs, and is it appropriate, and what are the profit margins? Well, that's certainly an open question. One of the issues is the risk of developing these drugs, particularly in small populations. And I think that along with the issues of trial development and the challenge of no longer being able to do trials of 1,000 patients who are available in every doctor's office, when you're looking at trials for ROS1 or ALK or even EGFR, those are challenging to do, and you're talking about a market in real life terms that is not as substantial as a blockbuster drug for some big group. On the other hand, the goal for patients, docs, and certainly the companies is to have people on a drug that can be on it for a very long time. So the cost of the drugs is regulatory burden, which is not just to kick the FDA, but the whole process it's very, very expensive and burdensome to run well-monitored clinical trials. It's hundreds of millions to billion-dollar propositions to develop these trials. That said, one of the debates about the cost of these agents is that if trials are leading to approval of crizotinib and ceritinib based on a few hundred patients, and they're being approved in very rapid time, which we are all delighted about, is it fair to justify the high cost of these drugs for the years and years and multiple trials that supposedly went into them but didn't actually? So it's a debatable question. I will say that that when I've had these discussions with several folks from various companies, Novartis has been constructive in the discussion. Others do as well, pretty unflinchingly, and say it's complex. The reality is that these drugs have only a very finite period of years before they are off patent and they make no money. So it's really kind of you make hay while the sun shines. And many of these trials, many of these agents, they invest a ton of money in and never see the light of day, and we don't think about those. I don't know if you have other comments.
Well, I do. 50% of clinical trials in the United States happen in 10 states.
Wow.
So there's 40 states out there that aren't participating, for the most part, in clinical trials in a big way. And if you take if you got the drugs to more patients, and community hospitals are a barrier to this because they're not participating in clinical trials. And consequently, even in community hospitals, the community oncologists, the information that happens, ASCO was mentioned 1,000 times today, but that information getting back to the community hospital doctors takes a long, long time. So if we could get the drugs to the right patient at the right time and quicker, I think we could reduce the cost of actually developing the drug. It takes too long to get it to the patients and too long to get a return on investment.
Part of that cost, from what I'm hearing on the internet, which means it's not necessarily reliable information, is the cost of failing trials, that trials usually don't succeed. We've been amazingly lucky with some of these targeted drugs, and that they've been hitting base hits or home runs time after time. And if what I've read were true, it was saying that most drugs that look promising in the lab don't succeed. Of course they don't, because it went on to say those that succeed phase 1 trials, most of them don't succeed in getting FDA approval. So if you've got a very high failure rate, then you know that's going to drive up the cost that a drug company needs to absorb in order to develop an effective new drug.
I think it's also worth pointing out that people will often write on the Grace site or some other place about some really exciting work that's been hyped about, cancer cured in a mouse, or a phase 1 trial that's moving forward, and people think, is this the cure? We all have realized major benefits, but there are many, many steps between promising idea in the lab and actually effective, safe drugs for humans with this disease. And it was Judah Folkman, the father of angiogenesis and Avastin, who said, if it was just a matter, if you're a mouse, we've got a great cure for you. But but the problem is, everything can, in preclinical studies in the lab, kill cancer. If you add ketchup in enough quantities, you'll kill most cancer. But everything, there's so many steps between that and having an effective drug that it's a real challenge. So I personally feel like, unfortunately, Grace and many of us end up as wet blankets all the time, tempering the enthusiasm of, what I fear to be somewhat irrational exuberance of media outlets that everything is the biggest breakthrough in the world because that's what generates eyeballs for everything. But some of it turns out, but it's important to temper your enthusiasm with a healthy skepticism. One question that comes up, Craig, are any books or other tools offline that you find to be effective? I know you highlighted several online tools. Anything else, or is that pretty much the exhaustive list?
No. Now, to elaborate on that short answer, I tend not to spend too much time thinking of books and material that took years to develop and then publish and may now be out of date. I would prefer to read the latest research and work with that. Stuff that's been around for a long time, even that stuff, that even if it might be somewhat stable information, a book is written from a specific point of view. A book is not a research paper, it's an opinion. Just like a docudrama is an opinion, it's not research. So if you want a more objective, more current view, I tend to want to look at the actual research and work from there. That isn't to say that there aren't some textbook style things that catch my eye and I say, oh, I'd like to learn more about that. Like learn about TKIs in general and how do they work and how are they structured or something like that. But I usually don't wind up finishing a book. I have enough papers to try to read.
Fair enough. One other question that came up was, they said, Bonnie, please come up with an ice bucket challenge for lung cancer.
Well, November is coming around. We have something, so hold on.
And there's been a lot of discussion. I wanted to point out one other source that Craig gave a shout out to, and that's the hashtag LCSM, lung cancer social media. And it's on Twitter. That's a home for it, but it's moving out to other things. And really the hope is for that to be a bat signal for lung cancer, for patients, for docs, for everybody. If you've got some newsworthy link, put it there so everyone in the lung cancer community can find it and follow it. Another point that Bonnie made was, there's many organizations and we focus on different facets, but we share a lot of common goals and we need to, because it's not going to just be given to us. And one of the ways that LCSM, or Lung Cancer Social Media, started was following on the great success of the breast cancer community, which I think a lot of us feel some envy for, but they paved the way. It didn't come naturally there either, but it really shows what's possible. There's a lot of lung cancer in the world, and a lot of our challenge has been that not too few people have lived long enough, and hopefully one of the benefits of people living longer is that we can really advocate more for ourselves, but we also have to get over the stigma issues and work together. But part of it's going to really be acting like a community, right, and galvanizing from all of the different angles of one group or another. So we've been talking about a pie in the face challenge or something like that. So we'll see. But I would encourage people. LCSM has a chat every other Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And just follow the chat. There's the website for the blog and Facebook and various things.
add one thing
Please.
to what you were talking about? You know, we have a second foundation that's a research foundation, and we've just launched a study for genomics of young lung cancer. And this is for patients under 40. And we actually got a couple negative comments on our sites from people over 40 saying,
No.
what about us? And of course, we focus on all lung cancer patients. But the young faces out there, and there's some in the room today, are really waking people up. And when they see those faces, they say, maybe anyone can get lung cancer. Maybe that's possible. Maybe we ought to band together and do something about this.
And I think a related issue is, smoking status and, or just having a mutation or not having a mutation. I mean, I think it can be frustrating and challenging for us as a community to have the typical news media angle of, oh, here's a 41-year-old never smoking, and she never even smoked.
Right.
And as if people who smoke deserve lung cancer.
Exactly.
But we cannot afford to be us and them. I mean,
Right.
the rest of the world is already too easily that way.
Right,
that
exactly.
We cannot afford to have a civil war about who smoked and who didn't.
Right.
Nobody deserves it. There's a question to Bonnie about, you had mentioned you have multiple family members who had lung cancer. How much of an interest in research funding various efforts is genetics?
Huge. We talk to patients all the time, and they say, I don't know why I got lung cancer. It's not in my family. And I think I mentioned this a little while ago. We don't really know a whole lot about our ancestors. My grandmother had a Bible, and all the ancestors died in bed, apparently, because that's what they wrote, died in bed, so that's dangerous. Don't sleep too much. But to that point, there is a study out there that we proudly funded with Jeff Oxnard at Dana-Farber called Inherit, and we helped build the trial for that as well, and that is looking into inherited lung cancer. And we're hoping to find some things. And I think to the clinical trial issue too, if we look at small targets like EGFR and ALK and other things and grow this pie chart that way, we still have this big chunk in the pie chart that says other. I think we're going to have to accept that we're going to be filling those in one at a time.
Yeah.
And those trials can be less expensive because it's a smaller target, less cohorts, less people, less money.
Well, I do think, though, that the lung map program, the master access protocol, I mean, that has
Exactly.
that is an extremely elegant plan in many ways. First of all, because you don't have to be one of the biggest centers to participate. These are run through big cooperative groups, so there are many centers. Your local community, reasonable sized place will often have access or should. And so that means that the local docs can get experience testing for these and get their patients with a rare mutation onto a drug and a trial that they wouldn't otherwise have the ability to put patients on, because you can't open a trial for when you expect to put on one or half a patient a year.
Exactly.
So that's
Exactly.
it's incredibly nimble.
And it was a collaborative effort that involved government, the NCI, NIH, institutions, ourselves. I know Longevity was a partner in this. We all had Friends of Cancer Research. We all had something to say about how this trial was put together. And it is a game changer. It really, really is. And to Jack's point, community hospitals can actually participate because all they have to really do is test the patient, have them sequenced, and put them on the drug that fits their particular profile. And it's got 5 arms. So they're looking for more data in one trial. Most trials are only looking for one piece of data, and one drug. So I think that's the
Well, and I
beginning
think
of
the other
change.
really appealing thing is that you have something like this. The challenge that I see about the multiplex testing that is going to become extremely widely available through Foundation and many others is, you can test for 50 or 500 different things, but if you don't know what to do with the information, it's not that helpful. It's just frustrating. And so having something actionable of if you have this, we've got a trial for you. If you have that, we've got a different trial for you. And if not, we'll try this, but we're still going to bank everything,
Right.
is really, really valuable.
And many doctors are coming together to help patients that are being seen in the community arena and reading their lab, reading their sequencing tests, and giving them, calling their community doc saying they really should be on crizotinib or whatever, or they shouldn't be on Tarceva because they have a exon 20,
Right.
deletion. So it's collaboration. We need to work together, all of us, in every way possible.
I'll add that in one aspect, even though it's rare that these multiplex tests, these gene sequencing tests, even though it might be rare that they find some new gene that might have some new drug that no one's ever heard about yet, I'm an example of where at the time I had my testing done, I was one of those who did benefit. And even if I didn't, even if there weren't one yet, it gave me some peace of mind to know that's what it is. I don't know what gave it to me, but at least I know what it is. I know a name. I can try to keep looking out, for what could come down the pike. And I was a lucky one. It did. I know I was just lucky, perhaps. Some religious people would say it was the hand of God that navigated me through all this path that got me, to a treatment that has lasted me for a while. So I would say that although I recognize clinically, maybe not practical, statistically, it doesn't benefit that many, it helps some, they need some kind of testing, but all those hundreds of extra mutations that aren't necessarily that relevant to any kind of a treatment, yeah, I know, it's not really that big, but it does help understanding, and who knows, maybe if I last another year, one of those things will find something new. A second driving mutation that no one ever thought there could be two in a people, that each one by itself might help, or et cetera.
I think in less than 10 years, people are going to be treated for their cancer, whatever cancer it is, based on their molecular profile. And it won't have anything to do about lung cancer or colon cancer or breast cancer or anything else. Obviously, surgically, you'll want to take out the right organ. But we're all entering into a whole new phase.
Well,
and it's very personal.
And immunological profile as another dimension.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
And Gieden Blumenthal had mentioned that things are moving towards the bucket approach of, if you have a HER2-driven cancer, whether it's breast cancer or gastric or some other, or EGFR or ALK, it's what's driving this, not where did it start necessarily. So that's a big change.
That's showing up. HER2 is showing up in men. What we're thought of as female markers are showing up in men and vice versa. And there are drugs attached to those things. So it's very exciting.
Yes.
Just we need to wrap up. We had a couple of questions about vaccine testing in lung cancer. It's related to, it is being related to immunotherapy. It's just a different kind, dendritic cells or whatever. But it's important to say that this is not something that has been abandoned or isn't being studied because it's not financially valuable to a company. There are challenges of doing dendritic cell testing, certainly in early stage patients, because it takes a very, very long time to read out a result. So if it requires lots of patients after surgery to do testing, and then it takes years to find out if it works, that's a barrier. One of the other barriers of vaccine-based therapies, particularly if it requires submitting some of your tissue and doing a personalized vaccination approach, is that a lot of patients cannot feasibly go 3 months or more in the time it's going to take to get the vaccine tissue back before starting it. If you're already really compromised and having a difficult time with your activities of daily living, it's hard to embark on a vaccine therapy when you've got a very high tumor burden and are very compromised. And also vaccine-based therapies are not likely to be at their best when patients are already compromised by being on chemotherapy, which they've needed just to get to that point. So there's a lot of practical barriers. But I assure you that the companies, if there's a way to make it viable commercially and effective enough, there's there's still interest in all of these. I mean, you cannot have anything more exciting than the immunotherapy approaches in lung
Exactly.
and melanoma and others. This is white hot, and the biggest problem we've had with clinical trials is crowd control, frankly. So.
And remember, that was strictly in melanoma for a long, long time. And now it's working, it's showing great promise for lung. So those were drugs that were already out there in another cancer and another disease. So more and more and more of that. And collaboration outside of lung is important too. We work with the Pancreatic Cancer Network. We work with other cancers to find out what they're doing, what are they doing differently that we could move over to lung cancer, et cetera. So it's huge.
So I'd like to wrap up today, close by thanking Craig, Bonnie, and all of the faculty for participating. Many of them are still here and would be happy to socialize, answer questions or anything afterwards. Also to mention that there are a couple of social events. Craig is going to be at Carrie Nation Cocktail Club just a block away at 11 Beacon Street just after this, around 4. And there's going to be a group at the Old City Plaza for Lung Cancer Champion photo and video shoot, blowing bubbles for lung cancer awareness if people would like to do that. Grace is doing an immunotherapy program, a similar patient-oriented forum with experts in immunotherapy, not just in lung cancer, but in melanoma, GI cancer, kidney, various things. And these are going to be some of the leading experts who have been developing this work, and a lot of it, as Bonnie said, is moving away from thinking, well, I'm a lung cancer patient or a melanoma patient, but the immunotherapy, we're borrowing from each other's successes, and it's been a very good thing. That's going to be in Chicago at the end of October. So that's information's going to be on the Grace website. It's right after SWOG, yes. And again, I would like to thank our sponsors, Novartis, AstraZeneca, Genentech and Astellas, the Addario Lung Cancer Foundation, Longevity, Boehringer Ingelheim, and Clovis. I wanted to also, because I neglected to before, thank Carly Bauman for putting it all together. Thank you. I want to thank the Seth McIntyre and Nancy Slatica who have been circulating and providing the Q&A. And our tech assistants NSCI group who have been coordinating all of this. I want to mention that the video material is going to be made available on the site and put on YouTube and everything as soon as we can get that together. So obviously you couldn't be at both breakouts at the same time. I guess most of you were not focused on both, but if you happen to be, or if you missed something, it's going to be available through the websites and video and YouTube. So look for that, and that's from our group here. And I want to thank the webcast audience and all of you for coming, because I know that for those of us on the faculty, from my perspective, interacting with all of you, and many of the faculty have alluded to this, it has been very enriching. I think for you guys as well, a big part is meeting other people who are in the same boat, and many of you have known these folks virtually for a lot longer than you've known in real life. So with that, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it.